Today, we're talking about the first 5 years of retirement, right? As you step into this new season of life where you're not expecting a reoccurring paycheck, right? And you're dealing with potentially multiple different streams of income or cash flow coming into the home, right? There's typically some uncertainty. And so, in our experience as 3 certified financial planners, the people that we get to meet with, there are some habits that we think are helpful and some mistakes that can be made, especially as you just step into retirement. So let's kick off this conversation today.
I love that even the first 5 years, that's usually they use that phrase for like young kids, how important the first 5 years of a child's life are. I think similarly, the first 5 years of retirement, you're transitioning emotionally, you're transitioning financially, and some of these habits that people create in these first 5 years are going to serve them really well or serve them very poorly. And the first one I'll jump into is kind of the spending. I see some of the habits that people choose when they first jump into retirement without a plan. They just say, we wanted a trailer. We wanted an RV. We're going to travel. We ask, how much have you traveled over the last 10 years? Well, we haven't, but that's because of work. And we think we're going to love it. And so they buy $150,000 trailer.
Well, we saw this
Or
with
more.
COVID. We saw this with COVID because people didn't want to go stay in a house or a motel. So they bought an RV thinking, hey, everybody. What they found out is that everybody was buying an RV. So they went to a resort or a park. And the cost to park that thing was enormous, as much or more than if they just went to a motel or a hotel.
And then post-COVID, unfortunately, the demand for RVs went down. And so we, on equal sides, we have clients that invest in something like an RV because it's a lifestyle that they're planning to enjoy in retirement, and they do. They use it all the time. They find friends on the road. They love it. They know already they don't want to do the type of travel that requires plane flights, right, et cetera. And then we do have other clients. So I think that, that purchase the RV and maybe they're in a position where they're even upside down and now it's sitting in their driveway. So the principle behind this is if you're stepping into retirement and you're anticipating a lifestyle where you want to travel more, you've got all these trips, a bucket list, just be really thoughtful, maybe even rent an RV for your first trip or two. Test it out. Make sure before you go and put a lump of sum down.
For sure.
Yeah. Just make sure you really love it.
And their Turo is a way that you can rent a used, somebody else owns it, but they have RVs. There's also companies like Cruise America where they can rent you an RV. And you could fly to a location that say, I want to be in the Southeast. I want to kind of drive around there. Well, you can go there and rent a vehicle and drive around. And then when you're done, you drop it off to the owner and you fly back home. And it's just so, from a financial standpoint, it makes so much sense. But anyway.
Yeah. Well, in this same vein, I think timeshares is another one that I would put into this bucket that we have some clients that love and utilize their timeshares. They might also use it for the benefit of their family members or even a family activity where multiple family members can get together. However, we do have others that get tired of going to the same place depending on what type of timeshare it is. And it's the resale market for a timeshare is very tricky.
It's rough.
Yeah. I would say if we took an average of how many of our clients that own a timeshare that they would like to get rid of it, I would say the vast majority of people would like to sell their timeshare, and they can't. They can't get anybody to even buy it, so they're stuck on paying these annual expenses, these timeshares, and some of them are relatively expensive. So again, you have to really think that one through carefully.
Yeah. I think both these we just talked about are kind of these, not red flags, but these ones that go up that people make these quick choices, but they're long-term choices. They're locking into an RV, which is a depreciating asset. They're locking into a timeshare, which has regular fees and kind of locks you into one location. So these first 5 years, what are some things? Let's talk about what they should be doing. And I'll start the first one. I think the first one is really making a bit of a plan as you go forward. Most people, when they are approaching retirement, they know they've got good assets. They know they've got good income, but they don't really know. It's a little bit of a black box. They don't really know what their income is going to be 3 years from now. They don't know where it's coming from, which sources. They're not really sure what they're going to spend. They think it's less, but they're not really sure. And for us, that's just some math crunching, right? Let's map out Social Security. Let's map out your pension.
Right.
Let's map out your bills. We can get some real good clarity pretty quick by creating an actual plan.
And I think I might just add on to that, not just creating, obviously, an overall plan is important, but a cash flow plan specifically, because it's going to be different in retirement than it has been prior. And your expenses may shift, right? A lot of our clients have goals to pay off their debt before they step into retirement. Not all, but many, right? So then the expenses, recurring expenses flowing out of the household are going to shift as well. So as a part of our planning process, we actually calculate or estimate pre retirement living expenses and retirement living expenses, expecting those might have some variation. And then to create a cash flow plan, right? Because some of those benefits to you, like Social Security, are going to be taxed differently. So, what are taxes going to look like for you in retirement? So, I think just there's so many different aspects to retirement income planning and how to maximize it that it can get really complicated. You just need to have a solid plan in place.
Yeah, and I think one of the hardest things for clients, if they haven't done this ahead of time, is that we really recommend to people that they have a fairly substantial emergency fund, a backup cash fund. And in my perspective, if you have your house paid for, there's no debt, you have your cars paid for, there's no debt, I'd like to see anywhere from 12 to 24 months of your spending in a like a certificate of deposit, money market account, combination thereof, that it becomes an emergency fund. So if your car breaks down, you have to replace your air conditioner, roof starts to leak, plumbing goes out, you're not having to go to borrow monies. You have the monies to take care of those issues. So it doesn't upset the apple cart, so to speak. But it's hard for people to realize, oh, I got to have that much cash. Well, not everybody's going to meet a 24-month cash deposit, right? It's hard to
Right.
get there, but over time, the sooner we talk about it, the sooner we can develop a cash deposit, and taking in maybe the last couple of years of earning where there's less expenses coming off those earnings, and we can set that aside, because retirement, you don't want to be worried about expenses that all of a sudden they just pop up, and you want to have the ability to handle them without
Now,
upsetting
let's
your.
talk. I love when you say cash because let's take a minute because we have clients again on all ranges of the spectrum. When we're talking about cash, are you talking about holding it in a savings account or are you talking
Of
about putting
course,
it
I
in
don't
the
want
back
anybody,
of
I don't
your
want somebody.
toilet
Yeah,
or burying it in the backyard? How much gold should I have at home?
no,
These are
no,
questions that come
no.
up.
I know, but I'm talking about FDIC insured bank accounts. So there's checking accounts, there's savings accounts, there's money market accounts, there's certificate of deposit accounts, and there's also treasuries. And we
Mhm.
help clients buy treasuries that are very liquid, but all these have various interest rates on them, and you collect the interest rate as you hold them. But I look at these as waterfall. So you take money out of your RMDs, you take money from your pension, you take money from other sources of income. It goes into your checking account. It kind of goes in there. If you have excess, then you put the money into the savings. It kind of builds up that. But it also can work the other way. So if you have need, it waterfalls over into these other accounts, going back eventually to your checking account. So if you want to have in savings, if you want to have about 2 months of spending, so that
Mhm.
waterfalls out, and all of a sudden you have to spend that money. Well, you can bring that over from your long-term savings to build that account back up. So there's
Mhm.
different methodologies here. But no,
Mhm.
I don't want to have a bucket in the backyard buried with coin and gold and
Now,
whatever.
that being said, there's nothing wrong with having some cash at home, but to any of our listeners who are sitting on a tremendous amount of cash at home, so tens of thousands of dollars. Now, to everybody, this is a little bit subjective, and their feeling of security and their trust in the banking system, right? These are conversations that we're having, but we need to think about inflation as you step into retirement. What is the purchasing power that you can retain while you're no longer earning income? And that's important. And so we encourage our clients to have a savings account, high liquidity, but that it's earning a modest rate of interest. So you're still, it's accessible, but it's earning something. It's not just literally parked there, not doing anything.
Yeah,
And when we
and
talk about,
go ahead.
sorry,
I'm
Brandon.
sorry. Go ahead.
I say when we talk about retirement, this is a unique moment, right? 4 years prior to that, for someone to say, I'm going to have 24 months of my spending sitting aside in a slow moving account feels unreasonable. It feels, why would I want to have that much cash? The reason we talk through this and we look at this type of planning when someone enters retirement is a lot to do with how the market's going to do the first couple of years of their retirement. As they're starting to pull from these accounts, right? Sometimes a rule of thumb is to say take, say 4%. I'm going to take 4% of my retirement accounts and start using that money to spend on things. Well, if the markets are good, that feels so easy. It feels like that number is growing. It's great. If you retire and it happens to be when you have a downturn and the markets are just coming down, clients, they can have a moment where they look at this and say 4% isn't realistic anymore. I've got to pull down to 3%. And that amount of money is so difficult. Whereas
So
if they
you're
had the cash and they could just let the market keep going and use their cash for a small season, they could allow that account to be preserved in a downturn. So it really is a retirement specific, and even I would even say early retirement, before all your Social Security is turned on, before your pensions are turned on, before all your annuities are turned on, before you have this full stream of income, having that reserve is a really good buffer.
Yeah, you're referring to sequence of returns. In other words, have flexibility in the amount of money that you take out if the account value drops because of the market conditions. So don't continue to take out the same amount of money if all of a sudden your portfolio dropped 10%.
Yeah.
You don't take it out because what you're doing is you're taking out what I consider dear dollars. And dear, I mean by DEAR. I mean, it's because you're taking out the principal dollars, not the earnings. And so if you do that for an extended period of time, then what you do is you lose your ability for that money to give you return later on. So what you're talking about is really important. So to monitor that on an annual basis. So yeah,
It's really
okay.
good.
Well, I love how we're segueing into some investment strategy approaches. And so the way that you invest as a retired person may change. Doesn't always, but it might, right? So prior to retirement, maybe your investment strategy was you were willing to take on more risk, right? Because as your time horizon shifts, your investments should shift. So, oftentimes, when people step into retirement, if there's a gap before they start receiving required minimum distributions, right? Or if there's a gap in other income, you plan to take your Social Security later for the maximum benefit, then this could potentially burden some of your investment accounts. And as a planner, we plan ahead for this time. So, if you're expecting to have a regular rate of withdrawal from your investment accounts, right? That's going to be a different strategy than you had pre-retirement. And so don't be afraid to make some of those adjustments.
And I think it's important for people to know that when you take out required minimum distributions, there are some people that will fall under the 73 age requirement, and some people that'll fall to 75. So a lot of these people we're talking to right now are younger than those ages. So they're talking about 65 up to 73 or 66 up to 75. So what you take out is not required, but it's what it fulfills your household needs, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And for most all of our clients, I would say we have a phased plan of where their income's going to come from. We'd say from this age to this age, most of your income's coming from this account. But then at a certain age, we're going to, turn on Social Security or turn on that annuity, or the money's just going to start coming from, say, your trust account is going to start coming out of your retirement account. But I would say a majority of our clients have some sort of a plan so that they know as they're going to retirement where their money's coming from, because most people have multiple income streams in retirement. But the question is when, how do we be tax efficient? How do we be investment efficient? And that's not, in my mind, it's not highly complex. It just takes some planning. It takes some forethought.
It's funny that you say that because I was going to encourage our listeners that it is complex, in the requirement for the certified financial planner, the CFP certification. I would say 75 or 80% of the curriculum is focused on preparations for retirement or retirement planning because there are multiple income streams. They're taxed differently when you utilize or exercise each lever and to what extent. I think it is complex,
Yeah.
so maybe we differ.
Well, maybe I should say it's not overly complex if you're working with a CFP advisor, right?
There you go.
We do this all the time. If you're on your own trying to figure this out, you're right. It's highly complex. But if you've got an advisor and you're working through this and you're making a plan, this is not something that is an impossible knot you can't untangle. This is something your advisor will walk through with you, make a plan. And I love it when a client can leave a meeting excited about their plan. They know where their money's going to come from the next 3 years. After that, they know we're going to shift to this income and that's going to fund what they need. Like that gets exciting when that uncertainty turns into confidence.
Clarity.
I think one of the most misunderstood retirement adjuncts or the things that you can do is the Roth account. And Jeremiah, we have software and you work with a lot of clients saying, okay, if you bring money out of your retirement account, because remember, when you put money into a Roth, if you're already retired, you're moving the money out of your retirement account. So therefore, you're subject to income tax. So why don't you briefly, kind of touch on what has to happen there to be effectively filling a Roth bucket, so to speak, for a client?
Yeah, and again, in a simple way, we have a number of clients who, as soon as they retire, their income was very high, and it comes very low just for that year after retirement. But we know in the future, annuities and retirement accounts, those are going to start filling up their income. So often they'll have a couple of years where they have very low income. So we say, hey, here's an opportunity. Why don't we use these low tax bracket years, get some money out of your retirement account and get it into your Roth account? And what that does is it in the future, it lowers the amount that's in that qualified account, the regular traditional IRA, and it gets into the Roth. And the Roth doesn't have RMDs. They're not going to get pushed into higher tax brackets later in life. But be strategic in that we talk about, okay, if we're going to do it in these low tax rate years, that makes sense. Are they charitably minded? Well, let's do a large Roth contribution and then reduce their taxes with charities. Like, let's figure out what makes sense to them. And the whole point of this structure is to look at their lifetime taxes and be as
Mm-hmm.
efficient as we can. Even if you trigger some taxes today, we know you're saving more than that in the future. And then on the
Yeah.
kicker here, which is the great benefit when we look at estate planning, for a child to inherit a Roth IRA, all those taxes were previously paid. They inherit it and it's generally tax free. They can take out the money. For a child to inherit a traditional IRA, wow, all those taxes survive. And that child now has to deal with those taxes way in the future. So there's a benefit
Mm-hmm.
to deferring the taxes, but what will tax rates be 20 years from now? What will the growth on that account be? Wouldn't it have been wonderful if those taxes could have been paid at lower tax rates and then never have to be taxed again? So
Yeah.
it doesn't fit for everybody. It's not ideal for everybody, but it's something that we like to look at just to say, is this an opportunity for a household?
Yep. So moving us on a little bit from tax planning and tax strategy and investment strategy and retirement, one of the things that I want to draw attention to for people planning to retire sooner than age 65, where you can activate Medicare, is don't underestimate the cost of healthcare coverage.
Oh, it is a
And
big deal, Laura.
it is a
Healthcare
very big
delivery is
deal.
expensive.
And it continues to increase. So, it's moving at a faster pace than just standard inflation, right? And so we have a consultant here that works with our clients that can actually create some estimates because it's one of the key expenses for our clients who want to retire sooner than 65. Now, can you do it? Yes, but don't underestimate that there might be, let's say you retire at age 60, about 5 years of added healthcare delivery. Now, if there's two partners in the household and one is still working, right? What are the opportunities that you might be able to join that existing healthcare employer provided healthcare plan, right? There might be some other options available. Cobra is a benefit that
Right.
extends for a short period of time after you step out of your job, but that's one area that you don't want to
Well, again,
underestimate
there's
for
some
sure.
employers that will cover you beyond, let's say you retire at 60, they'll cover your benefits up to 65 till you reach Medicare age. But you better know what your benefits are. I've had people just say, well, I'm just going to retire. I'm like, let's take a good hard look at your health care. And it's over $1,000 a month if you're going to get good health care benefit, before Medicare kicks in. Boy, it's not something you want to be cavalier about because it will absolutely terrorize your budget.
Yeah, and
Right,
also
right.
not one to be scared about. We've had a lot of clients who will say, I can't retire because of healthcare costs. Well, a lot of it is just putting some math to their plan. And just like you said, Randy, if it's $1,000 a month, that means 12,000 a year. Is there 12,000 a year available to use to cover these plans so they can retire early? In some cases, the answer is no, and they have to keep working. In other cases, we say, yeah, we'll just use this account for 2 years. That will cover your medical, and then you're 65, and then that covers you going forward. And it takes even the stress of that out. But like you said, Laura, it has to be planned for because it's a meaningful amount.
Yeah, and this I think relates too to when to take Social Security, right? As you step into retirement, let's say you're prior to age 67, considered full retirement age currently for Social Security, but you have that you're burdened with extra expenses, whether it's the healthcare costs, and you say, Social Security, let's go ahead and start it. What's the soonest? Age 62? Let's get it going. Don't be too trigger happy. Even though the thought of taking withdrawal from your brokerage account or a retirement account even to meet the expenses, the recurring expenses of your household, that still may be more beneficial over the long term than starting Social Security early, right? So it might still be more beneficial to wait until age 67 or
Well,
even
again,
maximum benefit at age 70, right? So that's a computation that needs to be. be
And
worked
most
out.
people come back at you. And so the biggest excuse that I hear is, well, what if I don't live long enough? I'm not going to get all my benefits. Poppycock. Okay. Everybody's living longer than they realize. I just talked to a lady where she was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer, but because of medicine, she's now 10 years longer, way past her date that she thought she was not going to survive. She'd stopped putting money into a retirement plan, and she said, I don't know. It reminds me of AIDS. When AIDS was full blown back in the late 70s, early 80s, people thought it was a death sentence. How many people right now have lived with AIDS and are living a fairly normal life because medicine has delivered, the right kind of, I guess, prescription or whatever you want to call it. It's not a cure, but it helps you maintain your life. And so life expectancy has expanded because of this. And so many people say, well, I'm going to start my Social Security early because what if I die? I'm not going to get it all. Oh, come on. You're just being
Right.
greedy, bottom
Right.
line. You're
Well,
just
and all
being
the
greedy.
more with a married couple, when we look at, is one of them going to survive and who has the higher Social Security? So take some review, take some look at, and Laura, kind of go back to you said the beginning, the first 5 years, kind of the make it or break it. There's a lot of healthy habits and healthy confidence that people can live into and really spend their time deciding and discovering what they enjoy, discovering, what adds value to their life outside of just working for a paycheck. Or they could spend their time crunching spreadsheets, obsessing over markets, and having uncertainty and really holding back from the life that they could be. And that's, I think, the big difference of having a plan is being able to move forward with confidence. Hey, I know where I'm headed. I know how I'm going to be provided for. It makes a huge difference
Yep.
those first 5 years.
Well, if one of our listeners is out there and they heard all of this and they're like, yeah, I generally get it, but you need a plan, right? Come talk to us. We'd love to help here at Tricord Advisors. We love to come alongside our clients and understand where they're headed and build a financial infrastructure that supports that. So we like to speak in the language of freedom, clarity, of providing hope, honestly, for a lot of our clients where the future is a little bit ambiguous. To all of our listeners, thanks so much and happy retirement.
Remember, Tricord, it's your money's best ally. Until next week, folks, may you grow in wisdom and knowledge. Thank you for listening.
We have a few more things to let you know about before we go. Podcast reviews really help us to serve more people and get this information into the hands of the people who need it. Please leave us a review. Even if it's not 5 stars, we welcome the feedback.
And we invite you to let us know what topics you would like to hear more about or what would benefit the people in your life who you're closest to. We have more resources online. Those resources are designed to help you share this great information easily with people in your life. To access those resources, please visit tricordadvisors.com.
Often we hear from clients that they wish they had talked to us sooner. If that's you, we'd be thrilled to see how financial planning can benefit your life. Email us at contact@tricordadvisors.com or simply click on the link in the show notes.
This show was produced by Graham Gardner at Model FA. Find out more about how to create a podcast for your financial planning business by visiting modelfa.com. We love creating content that's useful, resourceful, and maybe even a little entertaining. We want to make this mega universe of financial topics and advice applicable and helpful to your life.
Remember, at Tricord Advisors, we are your future's best ally.